Eden Care UK is a friendly intervention service providing support to people who are terminally ill reaching end of life. We advocate for a high quality of care and enhanced life choices, and challenge the isolation of elderly people through friendship and social activities. This service would not be possible without your support. Please donate edencareuk.com or call 07957 199 328.
আসসালামু আলাইকুম। ও আমার বোনজি, তাইনার আব্বা আম্মা নাই, আমারও তো ঠিক নাই বিয়া দিবার। আর তাই তোরারে দিবানে আমরা দোয়া করবো নি, তোরা সাহায্য করছো।
Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yesterday, we received a call from Medina University, Saudi Arabia. A brother contacted us and said his father passed away due to COVID-19. He's unable to come because of travel restrictions, and he's asked us to help him organize his father's burial. Inshallah, with your help and support, we are going to fulfill the obligation of burying a brother or sister in need. We are expecting a significant rise in referral to Muslim Burial Fund, specifically in relation to COVID-19. It's impacting the people in the UK and around the world. Inshallah, we expect your help. We are also helping people with telephone helpline, telephone befriending support. We are also giving these protective suits to the funeral services up and down the country. We need your help, brothers and sisters, especially with the burial support of those most in need. Jazakallah khair. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
আমি তোমার প্রিয় হতে চাই, আমি তোমার প্রিয় হতে চাই, আমি তোমার প্রিয়।
আমার নাম জামিলা, আমি ক্লাস 7-এ পড়ি। আমার আব্বা আম্মা মারা গেছে। আব্বা মারা গেছেন 3 বছর আগে, আম্মা মারা গেছেন 2 বছর আগে।
Assalamu alaikum. What you have taught us. Indeed, it is you who is the knowing, the wise. Rabbi zidni ilma. Welcome to the Health and Wellbeing with NK. I will be your host today, and this is only possible through 13 Rivers Trust, who has served the community in their hour of need. The topic tonight is dementia, and I have invited Zena. Zena, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Naureen. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you very much.
Oh, great. It's good to see you, and always good to hear from you, because you can enlighten us with so much knowledge. You've got wealth of knowledge of dementia. How did it all start with you? Because you've been busy with dementia for a very long time.
Yeah, I first came into dementia care over 30 years ago, and I started work as a healthcare assistant in one of our local hospitals, and I was always naturally drawn to the older people who came into the hospital who might be confused or frightened and anxious. And then I decided to do my nurse training, and back in 2003 I graduated and decided to specialise in dementia, and I love it. It's an absolute privilege to be able to work with people with dementia and their families throughout the journey with the condition.
Right. So today, when I talk about dementia, and I know there's a lot that we can go through about dementia, we can talk endless, but I wanted to highlight about dementia that when people talk about dementia, it often gets referred to a mental health condition. Can you tell me something about that?
Absolutely. So dementia is kind of an umbrella term for a whole plethora of diseases that cause dementia. And so therefore it's not a mental health condition. It is a life-limiting degenerative condition caused by a lot of neurodegenerative disease processes. And so therefore, I think that the misunderstanding comes from because dementia is often diagnosed within mental health services because that's traditionally where the specialism has sat. But actually, it is caused by diseases that affect the brain. So it's much more about a physical health problem. It can manifest itself with mental health symptoms. And I think that's where the confusion lies. So sometimes people can become quite distressed. And they call those sorts of things behavioural and psychological symptoms of dementia. But I would say often those symptoms are caused by people not being understood, not being able to communicate, feeling quite frightened and anxious and trying to make sense of the world around them. And actually, there's a lot that we can do to support people with dementia. I think there's a lot of fear associated with it in the fact that people think it's a mental health condition, there's nothing that can be done. And whilst we can't cure dementia, what we can do is offer people, in some cases, treatments that might slow down the progression, or we can support people to access support that enables them to retain their cognitive functioning for longer, because dementia is not just about memory, it's much more than that. And I think a lot of people think, well, I might have problems with my memory, it's got to be dementia. You need something else to have a problem with you need another cognitive problem for it to be dementia. So I think as we get older, all of our memories fade slightly. It's part of aging. It's like any organ, it gets wear and tear, and so our memory is not as sharp as it was. But if it starts to become more problematic in that people are forgetting really important appointments, or forgetting names, or forgetting how to do certain tasks in the house, one of the things we often see in the early stages perhaps is people can no longer make a cup of tea, for example, because there are about 20 things you have to do in succession to be able to pour the water and go through the process to make a cup of tea. And if someone can't do a small part of that, then they're unable to complete the task. So I think my advice is always, if someone's concerned, is to go and see their GP, because some of the symptoms that people think are dementia can be caused by reversible conditions. So sometimes people have health problems that haven't been diagnosed, that can be picked up in a simple blood test, that can be reversed, and so people feel better. Or it could be that they just have other things going on in their life. They might be stressed or anxious, or their mood might be low, and those are treatable things. So I always think it's incredibly important, if anyone's ever concerned, not to be frightened and to go and speak to their GP, because it might not be dementia. And if it is, it's about making sure we can get people the right support to understand the condition and how to live with it for as long as possible, and as well as possible.
Thank you. So with the ethnic minority, how do you see dementia developing in, like I see it's on the rise? Are people really hands-on with it, or do you think they're lacking knowledge? Would they need more support, or is there anything that they could go to get help or support? Because I see you're an Admiral nurse, isn't it? Because how does an Admiral nurse come into all of this? Because in Sheffield, we don't have an Admiral nurse.
I know you don't. We often have this conversation. So for those of you who don't know, Admiral nurses are specialist nurses that work with families affected by dementia. So not just the person with dementia, but the whole family. Because often it's not the person with dementia themselves who has to bear the brunt of the symptoms. It's often the family, when they're there to support that person and help them to cope with the changes that are occurring. And so we have a national helpline, a dementia helpline. It's called the Admiral Nurse Dementia Helpline, and there's always a nurse at the end of the line, Monday to Friday, 9 in the morning till 9 o'clock, and at weekends 9 till 5. But I think, we always hear these terms, hard to reach groups. I think it's about how we communicate effectively with ethnic minority groups about what dementia is and what it's not, and how best we can support people. What we do know is that people from some ethnic minority groups might be at higher risk of developing dementia because of some of the vascular risk factors associated with heart attack and stroke that for some reason tend to be more prevalent in some ethnic minority groups. But that's not to say that if you've got these conditions, you have to worry that you're definitely going to develop it. It's about thinking about how you can reduce your risk, about understanding some of the symptoms and causes. And I think if you understand what the risks are, then you can make lifestyle changes that might perhaps reduce your risk further. But I think there is a lot of fear and anxiety about what support is out there. And I think it's, from our perspective as Admiral nurses, what we try and do is understand what's important for each family, no matter where they come from, what their ethnicity, what their belief systems. It's about finding out what's important to them. And supporting them to be able to continue to live in the way they choose, whatever that may be. So it might be about supporting carers to find some time for themselves so that they're able to continue caring. It might be about reconnecting with some of those groups that actually sometimes distance themselves when dementia appears, because people are frightened, they maybe don't know how to communicate and don't know how to support people. And I know, 30 years ago, we wouldn't have conversations about cancer. We wouldn't talk to you wouldn't sit at the dinner table and talk about cancer and people's treatment and recovery. And that's kind of a bit what dementia is like. And a lot of that is because it's, for many people, it's unknown. People don't understand it. And so they're frightened of it. So I think the more we can talk about it, the more we can ask questions and answer those questions. I think it's really important. But as Admiral nurses, we don't discriminate against anyone. We want everybody to be able to get the help and advice that they need, because dementia is a difficult condition to manage if you don't have the right support, and that goes for anybody. So I would urge people to always get in touch with us if they need to. In some areas, you may well have access to your local Admiral nurse service, but if you're not sure, just phone the National Helpline and we'll see what we can do to help and support you.
Yes, the nearest one for Sheffield is Rotherham, but I would highly recommend people Google it and see where your nearest Admiral nurse is, because they're amazing. As you can hear, they know everything about dementia and they can support you. I have something to share, and this is very profound, and it's from the Quran, where Allah says that God defines human's life like, so Allah is the one who created you from weakness, then made after weakness strength, and then made after strength weakness, and he creates what he wills. And there is mention of an illness that is about forgetting things. So in the Quran, older age is called lowest stage of life. But in Surah Hajj, it is, Allah says, and among you is he who is returned to the most descript old age, so that he knows nothing after having knowledge. So kind of, I relate it a lot to dementia, because this is mentioned. And I think people should come forward, and if they have like symptoms with the family members, with the parents, that get it checked out on time, because it might be a small problem and they can help their loved ones. So Zena, what tips could you give us?
Well, I think it's about as soon as you start to notice difference, and it's often not the person themselves who notices things, because there are lots of different types of dementia and there's lots of different symptoms. But some of the most common ones we see are vascular dementia and Alzheimer's disease. And often in the earlier stages of those conditions, people might be a little bit forgetful. They might actually just get confused. They might forget appointments. They might forget names, and these things might happen. And you think they're a little bit out of character, or maybe their personality changes, or they feel a little, something, something's not quite, and you can't put the finger on it. It's always the best thing is to do to go and speak to the GP, have a conversation with them, of course, and ask them if they realise that they're experiencing any difficulties. And sometimes people are not aware, so it can take a little time to encourage people to go and see the doctors, because they may not see what you're seeing. But I think it's about just being observant, seeing what's going on, and encouraging them to be not frightened, but actually think that going to the doctors might offer them an opportunity to identify what the problem is so we can work with it, because the not knowing is sometimes worse than being able to deal with it. And I think, it also enables you to plan, because if you don't know what you have, what your condition is, you can't think about the future, you can't have conversations, and you can't make decisions about what you might want in the future. So I think the earlier that we can get people to access support, the better. And what I would say is, whilst it is predominantly a condition that affects older people, we do have about 50,000 people in the UK who live with dementia who are under 65. It's rare, but it does happen. So I think, again, the sooner that we can kind of change people's perception and understanding of dementia, the more people might be able to come forward and seek that early help.
Yes, thank you. I think we will go for a little break, and then we will come back and enlighten you with some more knowledge about dementia. Thank you.
Eden Care UK is a friendly intervention service providing support to people who are terminally ill reaching end of life. We advocate for a high quality of care and enhanced life choices, and challenge the isolation of elderly people through friendship and social activities. This service would not be possible without your support. Please donate edencareuk.com or call 07957 199 328. 480,000 cremations take place every year in the UK. Some of these cremations sadly include Muslims. We offer burial support for Muslim reverts who are vulnerable and alone, including an Islamic will service. If you or someone you know is worried about not receiving a Muslim burial, then contact us today, muslimburialfund.co.uk, or call 07957 199 328, a project of Muslim Burial Fund.
Yes, welcome back to the Health and Wellbeing with NK, and we're talking about dementia, and our guest is Zena tonight. So Zena, welcome back, Zena. We talked a bit about dementia, and you gave us some tips as well. The other thing that is important, well, it's important to me because I work with palliative care, is dementia and end-of-life care, because often people don't really think that way, that it can end that way. And I think I've seen that towards the end is really important when people have forgotten most of their personal things that they liked, or their religion, or whatever it is that they loved. It's really hard to care for them towards the end of life. So special message for carers and people who look after their loved ones who've got dementia. So over to you, Zena.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is one of the important things of getting an early diagnosis is being able to convey what some of the things that are important to you, why you're still able to communicate them, and while you still have mental capacity to do it. Because I think you're absolutely right. People's spirituality, their religion, their beliefs, and the things that are important to them are things that we really must take more notice of when patients are at end of life, whatever their faith or culture, because those are the things that are morally and ethically really, really valuable to those people. And so for that sort of reason, what we need to do is work with families to have conversations earlier on about what people might like. And I think that's difficult because even a lot of professionals don't talk about dementia in the terms of it being a palliative care condition. They still talk about it as, you know, memory loss and confusion. So a lot of families are not prepared. They don't expect their loved one to die with dementia. So I think it's very much about having those conversations much earlier, finding out what's really important and documenting those in advanced care plans, because it means that professionals who look after you at the end of your life have some understanding of what's important to you, so they can try and adhere to it. But also it takes some of the pain away from the families, because that person's voice is being heard and the families don't have to second guess what that person might wanted. You know, they can be very clear about it. And I think particularly when it comes to someone's passing and there's particular elements of your faith that are important to you to adhere to during your end of life and beyond your death, I think those need to be conveyed as very important areas for health professionals, so they get a better understanding. But I think it's about the carers also seeking support for themselves and making sure that, you know, they do take time for themselves, they do recognise their own emotions, because a lot of people who support family members with dementia grieve a lot before the actual death of the person they care for. They grieve the loss of perhaps their relationships and, you know, being able to communicate with them. And I think it's really important to enable yourself to grieve and manage those losses, both during the time of caring, but at the point of death and beyond as well.
Absolutely, because I've had quite a few cases where you feel like it's heartbreaking. It's really sad to see, obviously, when parents can't remember their children anymore, or their loved ones can't remember their spouses anymore. It's anticipated grief, isn't it? It's going on for too long. And I think this is something that I advise as well to people who've got loved ones who have dementia. Document everything, have something ready for them that they can look back and have a glimpse, and maybe it will remind them, maybe it will not, but at least it's there. That's who they are. It's a very sensitive topic, dementia, and we can talk forever about dementia. And I think what we need is awareness for people who have dementia, that it's something that you can help them with. There is a lot of resources out there. Zena, could you please mention some resources that are available?
I mean, I think if you just want information and advice, the Alzheimer's Society and Dementia UK have a huge amount of information and advice on their websites and telephone support and things like that. But often it's that pastoral support in your community. It's reaching out to people within your communities and talking to them about the difficulties you're facing. You know, there are mechanisms where people can get respite. Sometimes that's a little bit of care at home. Sometimes that's about having a break from being a carer. But I think, you know, unless you enable people in and help them come and support you, you're not going to be able to find out all the resources that are there. I mean, I could probably do a whole session with you talking about some of the things that might be available. But I think what is really important to remember is, if on a Friday someone enjoys going out with friends for coffee or a walk, or, you know, to carry out sporting activities, that doesn't change on a Monday when they got a diagnosis of dementia. They're still the same person. Dementia is only a small part of them. It doesn't define them. So all of those things that were important on the Friday before they got a diagnosis are important now. And I think it's about retaining those things and keep doing the things that are important. So just because you have a dementia doesn't mean you can't go to the mosque. It doesn't mean to say that you can't, maintain those relationships and friends. Those are really, really important. So I think doing that is vital. But I think it's very much about recognising that the more you do, the more you get out and you socialise, and the less isolated you become, the more likely you are to retain some of your skills and memory and actually feel better. You know, that's important to kind of continue to be the person you are. But seek help when you can. And coming back to that point you were saying about when families don't feel their loved ones recognise them, one of the things that I always say to families is they might forget your name, They might forget the relationship they have with you, but they don't forget how you make them feel. And so, you know, when you hold their hand, whether they recognize you as your daughter, son, mother, father, whatever, that's not so important. It's about how they make you feel and remembering that you have that connection. And I think that for family carers is really important to hold on to when perhaps that person hasn't got the ability to communicate with them in the way they once were. There will still be a special connection there.
Yes, thank you for that. I can remember that when we were talking about dementia, when you said, and I think that really stayed with me, is how you make somebody feel. So it's really important that how somebody at that moment is, and what you say to them and how you make them feel. And it's important that we always on good terms. And it's not a shame to tell to the masajid that somebody is forgetful, because even if they get there, they might grasp on something. And I think it's often good to mention that, so people will look out for them as well. And I think it's really important that we talk about these topics in our masajids, in our communities. The other thing is, what I wanted to highlight is, in the community, they have, well, at the moment, everything is on Zoom, but once they've opened, they have memory cafes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what would you advise on memory cafes, Zena?
I think they're wonderful. I think going to somewhere where other people are experiencing what you're experiencing, so you can share together, both the person with dementia and the family carers. You know, there's peer support, and getting that support from people who understand you is really, really important, because you can learn how to deal with situations and cope with them better, and they can signpost you to other resources. So from that perspective, I think they are incredibly important resources, because actually, you know, it can feel very, very isolating. So understanding that someone is experiencing similar things to you is really important.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for tonight, Zena. I'm sorry we've had some technical problems from my side. So join me. Yes, thank you. And you have, I've got my email address on the screen. So if you have any questions regarding dementia, please do email me, and hopefully I will get you in touch with Zena. And next week we will have Dr. Sadaf and Dr. Lodi on with palliative care. So do join me. Ramadan Kareem. And thank you so much, Zena, again. And it was a pleasure having you on the show. And have a good evening from me. Take care, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.